He had never felt love. Until an Apache woman entered his life, he grew up believing that feelings were a problem best ignored. From a young age, life taught him that emotions did not protect you, did not feed you, and did not keep you safe. He learned to watch people rather than trust them, to stay quiet rather than explain himself, and to rely only on what he could control. Love, to him, was not something real. It was a word people used when they wanted something or when they were afraid of being alone. His childhood home was small, quiet in the wrong way, and full of unspoken tension. There were no long conversations at the dinner table, no warm hugs before sleep, no one asking how his day had been. People came and went, responsibilities were heavy, and silence filled the spaces where care should have been. He learned early that expecting affection only led to disappointment, so he stopped expecting it at all. As he grew older, he became good at being alone. He did well in school not because anyone pushed him, but because success gave him structure. Structure felt safe. It gave him rules, goals, and reasons to keep moving forward. While others talked about dreams of family, romance, and happiness, he focused on stability. A steady job, a place to live, enough money to never have to ask anyone for help. These things mattered more than feelings. People often described him as calm, serious, and reliable. Some said he was distant, others said he was private. Few truly knew him. He did not share his thoughts easily, and when conversations turned personal, he found ways to change the subject. It wasn't that he disliked people. He simply did not know how to let them close. Letting someone close meant giving them power to hurt you, and he had promised himself that would never happen again. In his adult life, his days followed a predictable rhythm. He woke up early, prepared his meals, went to work, returned home, and spent evenings alone. Sometimes he read, sometimes he walked, sometimes he just sat in silence, listening to the quiet that had become familiar. There were moments when loneliness brushed against him, but he pushed it away. Loneliness was easier to manage than hope. Friends tried to introduce him to others, thinking he simply hadn't met the right person yet. He went on a few dates out of politeness, but they never lasted. The conversations felt shallow, the expectations heavy. People wanted warmth, reassurance, affection. He did not know how to give those things, and pretending felt dishonest. Eventually, he stopped trying. He told himself he was not meant for that kind of life. At work, he was respected. He kept his word, finished tasks on time, and avoided unnecessary conflict. His supervisors trusted him, and his coworkers relied on him. Yet even there, he kept emotional distance. He listened more than he spoke. He observed how people laughed together, complained together, and shared stories about their families. He felt like someone watching life through glass, close enough to see, too far to touch. Sometimes, late at night, memories surfaced without warning, moments from childhood, things he never said, questions that never had answers. He wondered what his life might have been like if someone had held his hand and told him he was enough. But he never stayed with those thoughts long. Looking back only made moving forward harder. He believed that people were shaped early and that by the time you reached adulthood, change was unlikely. He believed some people were made to love deeply and others were made to survive. He placed himself firmly in the second group. Survival was something he understood. Love was not. Then came the day that would later divide his life into before and after, though at the time, it felt like nothing more than another ordinary moment. He attended a community-related work assignment that required cooperation with local groups. It was not something he was excited about, just another responsibility to complete. He arrived early, as usual, stood slightly apart from the others, and waited. That was when he noticed her, not because she demanded attention, but because she did not. She moved with quiet confidence, speaking calmly, listening carefully. There was strength in the way she stood, but also softness. She did not rush her words or try to impress anyone. When she spoke, people listened. not because she was loud, but because she was present. She was an Apache woman, deeply connected to her roots. Her identity was not something she explained loudly. It was something she carried naturally. There was respect in her manner, for others and for herself. When their eyes met briefly, she nodded politely and looked away, not lingering, not curious. That small moment stayed with him longer than he expected. Throughout the day, he found himself aware of her presence, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, unsettling one. He noticed how she treated people with patience, how she paused before answering questions, how she smiled only when it was genuine. She reminded him of something he could not name, something steady, grounded, real. They spoke only briefly at first, exchanging simple words related to work. Their conversation was short and practical, yet he felt something shift inside him, something unfamiliar. It wasn't attraction in the way movies described. It was more like recognition, though he did not know why. When the day ended, he expected the feeling to fade. Instead, it followed him home. He replayed small details in his mind, the calm in her voice, the certainty in her posture, the way she seemed comfortable in silence. He did not understand why it mattered. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity, just a passing thought. But over the next few days, he realized something had changed. His routine felt slightly off, like a familiar path altered by a single stone. He caught himself wondering if he would see her again. The thought annoyed him. He had built his life on not needing anyone. Why now? He tried to dismiss it, focusing on work, on tasks, on logic. Yet a quiet question remained in the background of his mind. What was it about her that unsettled him so deeply? He did not know it yet, but something inside him, something long silent, had begun to wake. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to be felt. And for the first time in his life, he was not sure if he wanted to push it away. He did not expect to see her again so soon, yet life seemed to place her quietly back into his path. A few weeks after their first meeting, another community project brought them into the same space. This time, he noticed her immediately. She stood near a group, listening, hands folded calmly, eyes alert but peaceful. There was no rush in her movements, no nervous energy. She seemed rooted, like she belonged exactly where she was. He told himself it meant nothing. People crossed paths all the time. Still, his attention drifted toward her without effort. When she looked his way, she offered the same polite nod as before. It was simple, respectful, and somehow comforting. He felt his shoulders relax, though he did not understand why. Their work required them to cooperate more closely this time. They were assigned to the same small group, sharing tasks and responsibilities. At first, their exchanges were brief and practical. She asked clear questions. He gave direct answers. There was no awkwardness, no pressure. Silence existed between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It felt natural, like a pause rather than a gap. As the hours passed, he became aware of how different she was from most people he knew. She did not fill silence just to avoid it. She waited. She observed. When others spoke, she listened fully, without interrupting or judging. He found himself doing the same when she talked. Her words were simple, but they carried thought and care. At one point, they worked side by side in quiet focus. He noticed how carefully she completed her tasks, not rushing, not cutting corners. She treated even small duties with respect. That detail stayed with him. It reflected a way of living he had never practiced, being fully present in what you were doing. During a short break, someone asked her about her background. She answered calmly, sharing only what felt necessary. She spoke about her community, her family, and the values she had grown up with. There was pride in her voice, but no arrogance. When she finished, she smiled softly and returned to her work, as if the story was not something she needed to defend or prove. He realized he was listening more closely than usual. Her words about respect, balance, and responsibility stayed with him. These were not lessons she delivered, just truths she lived by. He wondered what it would have been like to grow up with that kind of grounding. Later that day, she asked him a simple question about his work. It was practical, nothing personal, yet something in her tone invited honesty. He answered more openly than he usually did. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from work to small observations about the day. He found himself speaking without planning every word, which surprised him. When the day ended, they walked out at the same time. Outside, the air was calm, the lights soft. They stood for a moment, unsure whether to part ways immediately. She thanked him for his help and wished him well. He returned the gesture, feeling a strange hesitation as she turned to leave. That night, he thought about their conversations more than he wanted to admit, not because they were dramatic or emotional, but because they were easy. He had not felt the need to protect himself or withdraw. The thought unsettled him. Ease was dangerous. Ease invited attachment. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed again and again, sometimes by chance, sometimes through work. Each meeting added a small layer of familiarity. They greeted each other with quiet smiles, exchanged brief updates, shared moments of calm understanding. There was no rush to define anything, no expectations. She never asked him personal questions directly. Instead, she shared small pieces of her own life. Stories about her elders, about lessons learned through observation rather than instruction, about the importance of knowing who you are before trying to connect with others. Her words were gentle, never pointed. Still, they reached him. Slowly, he found himself responding. At first, he spoke only about surface things, work, routines, practical concerns. But even that was more than he usually shared. He noticed she never pushed for more. She accepted whatever he offered exactly as it was. That acceptance felt unfamiliar and disarming. One afternoon, they found themselves alone for a short while, waiting for others to arrive. The silence stretched between them, but neither rushed to fill it. Finally, she spoke about the importance of stillness, about how silence can be a teacher if you listen carefully. He nodded, unsure how to respond. Her words stirred something deep inside him. Without planning to, he shared a small truth. He said he had never been good at understanding feelings. The admission surprised even him. He expected discomfort or judgment. Instead, she simply listened, her expression calm and open. When he finished, she thanked him for trusting her with that thought. She did not offer advice or solutions. She just acknowledged him. That moment stayed with him. He realized how rare it was for someone to listen without trying to fix or change him. Her presence felt steady, like something solid he could lean on without falling. At the same time, fear crept in quietly. He noticed how often he thought about her, how his mood lifted when he knew he might see her, how her absence left a faint sense of loss. These feelings made him uncomfortable. He had built his life on certainty and control. This was neither. He tried to create distance, limiting conversations, keeping interactions brief. She noticed the change but did not confront him. Instead, she respected the space he created. That respect made him question himself even more. Why did the idea of losing her presence bother him so deeply? He began to reflect on his beliefs about love and connection. He had always thought they were distractions, risks he could not afford. Yet here was someone who brought calm instead of chaos, understanding instead of demand. She did not ask him to be different. She did not ask for anything at all. One evening, he walked alone as he often did, but his thoughts were louder than usual. He realized that for the first time in his life, he was curious about another person's inner world. He wanted to know what she thought when she was quiet, what memories shaped her, what hopes guided her steps. The realization scared him. He understood then that something was changing, whether he allowed it or not. He could retreat into familiar solitude, or he could stay present and see where this path led. Neither choice felt safe, but only one felt honest. As days passed, he stopped pulling away. He allowed conversations to unfold naturally again. The connection between them remained quiet but strong, built on mutual respect and patience. He did not name his feelings. He did not need to. It was enough to acknowledge that she mattered. He did not yet understand what love was, but he was beginning to understand connection. And for a man who had lived his entire life guarded and alone, that understanding marked the start of something new. As time passed, their connection grew in a way that felt slow and natural, like water finding its path through stone. There was no sudden change, no dramatic moment that announced something new. Instead, it was a series of small moments that quietly reshaped him. A shared smile, a thoughtful pause, a few words spoken honestly and received without judgment. He began to notice changes in himself first. He listened differently now, not just to her but to others as well. He paid attention to tone, to meaning behind words, to what people did not say. He realized he had spent much of his life guarding himself so tightly that he had never truly heard anyone, including himself. She seemed to sense these changes without commenting on them. She never pointed out his growth or praised him for opening up. She treated his progress as something natural, something that did not need recognition. That quiet acceptance made him feel safe in ways he had never experienced. One afternoon, they worked together in a calm, open space where the day stretched slowly. The environment invited conversation, and for once, he did not resist it. She spoke about the importance of balance, how giving and receiving, speaking and listening, all needed space to exist together. She shared how her elders taught her to observe life carefully, to learn from experience rather than force outcomes. Her words stayed with him. He realized how often he had tried to control his life by avoiding emotional risk. Control had kept him stable, but it had also kept him distant. Stability, he was learning, was not the same as fulfillment. Without planning to, he began sharing more of his past. Not all at once, and not with dramatic detail, but in pieces. He spoke about growing up without warmth, about learning to depend only on himself, about believing that needing others was a weakness. Saying these things aloud made them feel real, but also lighter, as if the weight lessened once shared. She listened quietly, her attention fully on him. She did not interrupt or rush him. When he paused, she waited. When he finished, she thanked him for trusting her. She told him that survival teaches strength, but connection teaches meaning. The words were simple, yet they reached deep. He thought about that long after they parted that day. Meaning. He had built a life focused on function, not meaning. Work had purpose. Routine had order. But meaning was something he had avoided because it required vulnerability. Now he wondered what his life would feel like if he allowed space for it. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened through shared experiences rather than constant conversation. They worked together, walked together, sometimes sat in silence together. Silence with her felt different. It did not demand anything. It simply existed, steady and calm. He noticed how she handled challenges. When plans changed or problems arose, she did not react with frustration. She paused, considered, and adapted. Her calm did not come from ignoring difficulties, but from accepting them as part of life. He admired that strength. It was not loud or forceful. It was grounded. Slowly, he began to reflect her approach. When stress appeared, he found himself breathing instead of withdrawing. When uncertainty surfaced, he stayed present instead of escaping into routine. These changes were small, but they mattered. One day, she invited him to attend a community gathering. The invitation was gentle, without pressure. He hesitated. Being part of something larger than himself made him uneasy. Yet something in her expression encouraged trust. He agreed. The gathering was simple and respectful. People shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. He observed how she interacted with others, with kindness, patience, and respect. She belonged there, not because she tried to stand out, but because she was deeply connected. He felt out of place at first, unsure how to participate, but no one questioned his presence. No one demanded explanation. He realized he had spent his life expecting rejection, even when none was offered. Slowly, he relaxed. As the day ended, he thanked her for inviting him. He admitted that he had been nervous. She smiled softly and said that discomfort often means growth is near. The idea stayed with him. That night, he reflected on how much his world had expanded without him even noticing. He had not changed jobs or locations. He had not made grand decisions. Yet something inside him was different. He felt more alive, more aware, more open. With openness came fear. He began to worry about what he stood to lose. Caring about her meant caring about an outcome he could not control. It meant trusting someone with parts of himself he had long kept hidden. The thought frightened him. He tried to pull back again, though not as sharply as before. He shortened conversations, avoided deeper topics, retreated into old habits. She noticed, but once again she did not confront him. Instead, she maintained the same calm presence, offering connection without demand. Her patience made him face a truth he could no longer ignore. His fear was not protecting him anymore. It was limiting him. For the first time, he questioned whether safety without connection was truly safety at all. One quiet evening, he spoke honestly. He told her that closeness scared him, that he was afraid of depending on someone, that he did not know how to balance independence with connection. The words felt heavy but necessary. She listened carefully, then spoke gently. She said that connection does not erase independence. It strengthens it. She told him that choosing to care is not the same as losing yourself. It is choosing to grow. He felt something shift in that moment. Not certainty, but clarity. He did not need to have all the answers. He did not need to define the future. He only needed to be honest about where he stood. From that day on, he stopped running from his feelings. He allowed them to exist without labeling them or judging himself for having them. He allowed himself to care. Their relationship did not change overnight. There were still pauses, still moments of hesitation, but there was also trust. Trust built through consistency, honesty, and respect. He began to understand that love was not something that arrived fully formed. It was something built slowly, through choices made every day. Choices to listen, choices to stay. Choices to be present even when it felt uncomfortable. For the first time in his life, he did not feel empty. He felt unfinished but hopeful, and that hope, quiet and steady, was something he never expected to find. The closer he felt to her, the more aware he became of the fear that lived quietly inside him. It did not shout or demand attention. It waited patiently, appearing in moments of calm, reminding him of old beliefs he had carried for most of his life. Beliefs that said closeness always came with loss, that opening up meant getting hurt, that depending on someone was a mistake. He tried to ignore those thoughts at first. He told himself he was stronger now, more aware. But fear has a way of slipping through even the smallest cracks. It showed up in his hesitation, in the way he sometimes chose silence over honesty, in the distance he created without fully realizing it. She noticed the shift. She always did. But instead of reacting with frustration or questions, she gave him space. That space felt both comforting and painful. Comforting because it respected his boundaries. Painful because it made him confront his own behavior. He realized that she was not pulling away. He was. Life outside their connection continued to move forward, bringing with it pressure and responsibility. Work became demanding. Decisions had to be made. Expectations increased. In the past, he would have handled these moments by closing himself off emotionally and focusing only on tasks. This time, the choice felt different. He wanted to share the weight, but old habits whispered that he should handle everything alone. There were days when he felt torn between who he had been and who he was becoming. The old version of himself felt familiar and safe. The new version felt uncertain, vulnerable, and alive. That contrast exhausted him. One afternoon, after a long and difficult day, he chose distance without meaning to. He ended conversations early. He avoided eye contact. He left without explanation. The moment he was alone, regret followed. He knew what he was doing and he knew why. Fear had taken control. Days passed with less communication between them, not because of conflict but because of unspoken tension. He missed her presence more than he expected, the calm she brought, the understanding, the quiet strength. Without it, his world felt heavier. He spent long evenings thinking about the patterns of his life, how he always stepped back when things became meaningful, how he protected himself by leaving first, emotionally if not physically. He realized that his greatest pain had not come from being hurt by others, but from never allowing himself to fully experience connection. The realization did not bring immediate peace. It brought discomfort. Growth often does. He questioned himself honestly for the first time. What was he really afraid of? Losing her or losing control? Being hurt or being changed? During this period, she did not disappear from his life entirely. Their paths still crossed, their interactions still respectful, but something essential was missing: the openness. The ease, the shared stillness. He felt the loss deeply. One evening, they found themselves alone in a familiar space. The silence between them was different now, heavy. He could sense her awareness, her patience, her restraint. She waited, not because she did not care, but because she respected his process. The weight of everything he had avoided pressed down on him. He knew that staying silent would only deepen the distance. For the first time, he chose discomfort over escape. He spoke slowly, carefully, choosing words that felt true. He admitted that fear had taken over, that he had pulled away because he did not know how to hold something meaningful without feeling overwhelmed. He told her that caring scared him more than being alone ever had. She listened, her expression steady, her presence grounding. When he finished, she took a moment before responding. She said that fear is natural when something matters, that avoiding pain also avoids growth. She told him that she did not expect certainty from him, only honesty. Her words eased something inside him. He realized that he had been holding himself to impossible standards, expecting himself to be fearless, perfect, ready. She was not asking for that. She was asking for presence. He asked her then, quietly, if he had hurt her. The question mattered more to him than he expected. She answered honestly. She said that distance can be painful, but misunderstanding hurts more. She told him that clarity, even when difficult, builds trust. That night marked a turning point. Not because all fear disappeared, but because he chose to face it instead of running. He understood that love was not about certainty. It was about courage. The courage to stay, to speak, to risk. In the days that followed, he made small but meaningful changes. He checked in instead of withdrawing. He shared when he felt overwhelmed instead of pretending he was fine. He allowed her to support him without feeling weak for accepting it. Their connection regained its balance, stronger for having been tested. He saw how conflict, when handled with honesty, did not destroy connection but deepened it. This was new to him. He had always believed that difficulty meant failure. He also learned to set boundaries without building walls, to take space when needed without shutting her out. These lessons did not come easily, but they came steadily. She continued to be patient, but she also remained true to herself. She did not chase him or disappear. She stood grounded, showing him that strength and kindness could exist together. That example taught him more than words ever could. He began to understand that love was not about losing himself. It was about becoming more fully who he was meant to be. The parts of him he had hidden, his sensitivity, his doubts, his desire for connection, were not flaws. They were human. As he faced his fears, he felt a new sense of respect for himself. Not because he had everything figured out, but because he was willing to try, willing to grow, willing to choose connection even when it felt risky. He knew challenges would continue. Life was not suddenly simple, but he also knew that retreating into isolation was no longer an option he wanted. He had tasted something deeper than safety. He had felt what it meant to be seen and accepted. For the first time, he believed that love was not a threat to his independence. It was an extension of his strength. And that belief changed everything. Time continued to move forward, steady and patient, much like the connection they had built. Nothing about their life together felt rushed or forced. Each day added a small layer of understanding, trust, and quiet confidence. He no longer measured his progress by how little he felt, but by how honestly he could stay present, even when emotions felt unfamiliar. He noticed how different his mornings felt now. He still woke early, still followed his routines, but something inside him was lighter. The silence in his home no longer felt empty. It felt like space for thought, for reflection, for growth. He often found himself thinking of her, not with anxiety but with calm appreciation. They spent time together in simple ways, walking, talking, sitting quietly, sharing meals without distraction. These moments might have seemed ordinary to others, but to him, they were meaningful. He was learning that love did not always announce itself with excitement or intensity. Sometimes it arrived gently, through consistency and care. He became more open with his words. When something bothered him, he spoke about it instead of burying it. When he felt unsure, he admitted it. Each honest conversation strengthened the trust between them. He learned that being open did not weaken him. It gave him clarity. She continued to be herself, grounded, thoughtful, patient. She did not change to make him comfortable, and he respected that deeply. Her strength did not come from control, but from knowing who she was. That stability helped him stay balanced as he navigated unfamiliar emotional ground. There were still moments when fear appeared. Old habits do not disappear overnight. Sometimes he felt the urge to retreat into silence or distance. But now he recognized those impulses. He named them, he shared them, and each time he chose connection instead of withdrawal, the fear lost a little of its power. One evening, as they sat together watching the light fade, he realized something important. He was no longer afraid of losing himself. He trusted that who he was becoming was stronger, not smaller. Love had not taken anything away from him. It had given him depth. He reflected on the man he used to be, the one who believed love was not meant for him. He understood now that he had not been empty back then. He had been protected, guarded, waiting for the right conditions to grow. He also thought about how much he had learned from her without formal lessons. She had taught him through example, how to listen, how to pause, how to respond instead of react. These skills extended beyond their relationship. He found himself more patient at work, more understanding with others, more at peace with himself. As time passed, they spoke openly about the future, not in terms of rigid plans but shared values, honesty, respect, balance, growth. They agreed that love was not about ownership or certainty, but about choosing each other again and again, even when life was challenging. He felt proud of the progress he had made, but not in a loud way. It was a quiet pride, rooted in effort rather than achievement. He had faced fears he once believed were permanent. He had learned to trust someone without losing himself. One day, he shared something he had never said aloud before. He told her that before meeting her, he believed love was something that happened to other people. He said that he now understood love as something built, protected, and practiced, something earned through presence. She smiled and told him that love grows where honesty lives. The words felt true. He noticed how deeply he valued her presence, not because he depended on it, but because he chose it. That difference mattered. Choice gave him freedom. Freedom gave him peace. The world around them remained imperfect. There were still challenges, responsibilities, and moments of doubt, but he no longer faced them alone inside himself. He had learned how to share, how to lean without falling, how to stand with someone instead of apart. He also learned to forgive himself for the years he spent closed off. Those years had kept him safe when he needed protection. Now he needed openness instead. Life had shifted, and he had shifted with it. As seasons changed, he noticed how naturally she fit into his life, not as a disruption but as a complement. She did not fill a void. She walked beside him. That partnership felt right. He understood now that love was not a dramatic transformation but a steady one. It did not erase his past. It helped him make peace with it. It did not promise certainty. It offered trust. Looking back, he realized that love had entered his life quietly, without demanding attention. It arrived through patience, respect, and shared stillness. It waited until he was ready to see it. He knew that his journey was not finished. Growth never truly ends. But he also knew that he was no longer afraid of the path ahead. Whatever came next, he would face it with honesty and courage. For the first time in his life, he felt connected, not just to another person but to himself. And that connection, steady and real, changed everything.